Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Fried Circuit. Our topic for today is the future of transport and the future of silicon chips, including possible alternatives. My name is Kabir and I'm a grade 11 student from the Cathedral and John Connon School. And with me today is Akshay Vora.
Yeah, I'm in grade 11 with Kabir as well. I really enjoy physics and math, and I'm fond of tech as well. So this is a topic that excites me quite a bit.
So, me and Akshay both have a keen interest regarding transport vehicles in general, and that's why we thought this topic is not only pertinent to the entire world, but something that we both enjoy. So, starting off with just the general future of transport, what we believe, I feel maybe in like the next 10 to 15 years, probably the entire car industry would have shifted to electric vehicles completely, seeing the progress that's currently taking place, not only in certain countries, but soon, yeah, but throughout entire continents.
It's also like I feel like every country has become a lot more environmentally conscious. So even if they don't look at it purely from a tech standpoint, I think a lot of countries want to move away from, like, if you see our buses in India, a lot of the, like, literally as they leave you can see the amount of smoke that comes out
Yeah.
and the amount of dust, and like just in general a lot of pollution is caused. So it's definitely one of the biggest driving factors for the government, and I think that's why everyone, like all the tech companies, are there's always rumors like a Google car, an Apple car, because I think that's going to be the primary focus.
Yeah, that's what. I mean, there are a lot of speculation of flying cars and those sort of things, but I think
Yeah.
that's still way too into the future to consider. But yeah, talking about like the government responsibility, even in Scotland, I think this year there was where the G20 countries met to speak about becoming more carbon neutral and those sort of things. So I think not only for like the benefit of the future generations, but just to be like environmentally like acceptable to other countries. I mean, I think it'll soon become like customary to international law to sort of have like electric vehicles to help the environment.
And even if you look at it like what the companies would want and what a customer would want, the even in phones, the like the chips and the technology is always getting smaller, so you can have, like, you have more space for luggage in your cars. If they become electric, you can, the cars themselves can be smaller, that can have traffic, like there's a lot of stuff that will be benefited from just this one change. And like if you think about it, you can even add so many more safety features and so many different, like you can, the entire system of the car will be really well integrated if everything is just running on technology rather than having part engine, part technology, which is what a lot of cars are.
Yeah, that's what. I agree that I feel like the benefits will definitely like outweigh the disadvantages. But then again, there's always that other fear, like how there's always like a certain group of people who are against any like benefits for, or they just have certain radical beliefs. So if you just consider like right now, it's probably you could consider Al Qaeda or any terrorists that probably try harming people physically. Into the future, it's probably going to be more towards like technology based groups, so probably like hacktivist groups. So I still think if like we shift our entire dependence to electric vehicles or autonomous cars, then there certainly is that spot of like, using it to a disadvantage for a certain group of people, like hacking into, say, traffic systems which control the future of moving cars and creating just accidents and leading to those problems. So I feel that fear will just constantly stay with people.
Yeah, that's really true. Like if you look at it from the viewpoint that like your entire car can be stopped immediately by someone far away, that's like quite a scary thing to think about, because like even if you look at like the, it's suppose a prime minister or president is traveling in the car right now, there's no way to access it from far away, but this would give,
Exactly.
yeah,
So I
it
feel
would
that
almost
just
make them a target.
yeah, that makes it one of like the drawbacks of, like having that thought, like that uncertainty that you never have complete control over your own vehicle. So I feel that's something that might hinder like this progress into the future.
Yeah, for sure. About the like talking about things like flying cars and stuff, I feel like those are there's always like an element where you think what is then science fiction can someday come in real life. But I think flying cars are one of those things where like as you think about it more, the practicality comes into question, like with planes, how you would have cars. That's why I think at least for the foreseeable future, cars will be on the road, but that doesn't mean that there can't be improvements to things like road rules and stuff like that, which could still make transport more efficient.
Exactly. There's like so many ways to consider that particular point. Like, obviously, I don't think it's at all feasible to say that flying cars can exist because there need to be so many rules regarding like flying traffic or teaching people to really like fly vehicles. And then again, there's the altitude problem. Like people can like fly cars at different altitudes, and that might cause accidents. So
Yeah, exactly.
the practicality of that is still quite distant. But then again, the other thing that you mentioned about like road rules changing or other developments on the road. So things like a hyperloop that Elon Musk proposed a few years ago. I feel that is something that we as a community should really look into, not only for like the benefit of saving time, but also resource efficiently and in those other aspects.
Yeah. And like even integrating technology with roads could be interesting. Like instead of using Google Maps or something, you could have a system where the directions show up on your windshield of your car. Things like
Exactly.
that, where it's not, and you would never miss a stop sign, for example, because it would just be integrated into the car system that, over here on this part of the road, there's a stop sign, and you'd know exactly where you're going.
Yeah, exactly. So, like integrating like these useful sort of technologies into the car is something that I think is already starting to happen. I think in like one of the new Audi models, there's like a certain algorithm which has been created where it tell like if you plug in your destination using the map like provided by the car, it'll tell you exactly at what speed to go throughout each road so that you don't really like you never get a red signal. And I mean that I found that as a really cool benefit. And I mean, we're basically already entering the future, you could say, with things like that.
Yeah, and like that also comes into play, like when you think about what we have right now, which is not necessarily fully autonomous, but partly autonomous cars, where like so in many cars right now they can do things like steer on their own and follow the road, but the technology isn't necessarily completely there yet. So they have features like you have to hold the steering wheel every some seconds to make sure the driver's awake.
Yeah,
So but as it progresses, I feel like you could have a situation where almost everyone in the car is a passenger.
yeah, I think
And
that's a proper possibility. And building on that, I think you could really use that technology for, say, like things like public transport, because you could imagine like an entire bus that's completely autonomous and it drives itself to certain stops, and all people need to do is get on, probably tap their bus card, and that just gives space for like the entire bus to be used for passengers. And yeah, there aren't really any other disadvantages that might come by having like a human driver. Like those mistakes are minimized, I'd say.
and even right now, a bus could be running late or something like that, but that would be completely avoided, right? Everything would be
Exactly,
by
exactly.
schedule.
But then I think like one of the disadvantages of that might be, like that human presence might not be there. Say if you're like a tourist in a certain country or something and you're unsure of how like the like the transport system works, and you board the bus and there's no one really to assist you because it's completely autonomous and like driven by a robot or like by artificial intelligence. So like that you can't really get help in any sort, or if there's like an emergency, for example, it would be really hard to like implement measures where the bus can understand that someone needs to go to the hospital instantly, so to like divert it in that way. Yeah,
Yeah, and also there's there's the question of a lot of jobs associated with public transport, like ticket collectors on a bus and drivers and like maintenance workers, stuff like that, people at bus stops. So a lot of those then wouldn't be required. And also there's like if you take cars and planes and things like that, people want to be pilots and drivers because I guess there's like many people enjoy the feeling of being in control of the vehicle and
exactly.
being able to do what they want. Like maybe if there's an emergency situation, you need to break some traffic rule. Or like an autonomous car, an autonomous bus wouldn't be able to do that. Like what you said, they wouldn't be able to divert the bus if they needed to. So that's also something that we need to think about. That is like how is it possible for the transport industry to be able to accommodate for all these factors?
Exactly. Even if you like possibly consider it having like a certain feature, like where it diverts it in case it can recognize an emergency, again, then that opens the path to like exploitation. Like people probably could use that feature to travel for free or just unnecessarily like cause problems within the transport system just to get like a thrill out of it. And
Yeah.
that's, I feel, one of like the major drawbacks that an autonomous public transport system could possibly have.
I feel that if we talk about the trains in public transport, those are something that could definitely be made completely autonomous, and those would be probably the easiest ones to convert straight away because anyways the like most trains are running on a good schedule. Like it's not that trains are dramatically late or early. They usually come on time in most countries. So that's why the change to an autonomous system wouldn't be too much. And obviously in a train, things like diverting, stopping, those aren't usually there. So it would only make the trains like even more efficient and even more on time, and that could even like open up the scope to maybe having larger train systems with more stops and maybe focusing more on that to keep the roads emptier, and that would even help with the other side of making cars and the entire traffic system better.
Exactly. And like the only other, I mean, another benefit of having like this autonomous thing in trains is also since it's like just like you use train tracks for it, there are no other obstacles on the way. So you can use
Yeah.
like further technological developments. Like I think one of the most recent ones is magnetic levitation in trains. So only a few, like a handful of countries have actually implemented it. But essentially, this would cut down on like it would make bullet trains look slow almost because it would work on electromagnets. And again, this, I mean, not only is it a benefit of saving time again, it's also environmentally beneficial because you're using electric energy and magnetic energy rather than fossil fuels and polluting the environment. So I feel the scope of like having an autonomous train is, well, much more feasible than any other sort of transportation as of now.
Yeah, for sure.
And it also allows to like experiment with these types of technology such as magnetic levitation. And just moving like towards in the magnetic levitation direction, coming back to, I think we brought it up earlier, like hyperloops, like essentially tunnels under roads or connecting certain like countries or cities across large countries to um, essentially streamline transport and save time.
Yeah, then even long distance travel becomes really quick, and short distance will be even quicker. Like you could go from one part of the country to another in like an hour, and maybe if there's a lot of development even under an hour it would be like extremely quick.
Exactly. And then, yeah, so I just wanted to ask you, what do you think like the future of delivery is particularly going to be? Like, do you still think we're going to have like truck drivers and semi-auto drivers delivering things, or do you think the world is ready to like move into the phase of implementing drones throughout like certain areas?
I think eventually the world will implement drones, but that again brings across the problem, right? That now it would be so easy for, like, let's say the drone gets caught in a line, like an electrical line or something like that, and now your package is gone. Or like if it's a very high value package, you may not feel safe that with a drone bringing it over, whereas a person, you know that it has, like, if it's raining, for example, the person will cover it. If it's, you get the idea that a person is more likely to keep it safe based on the conditions. Whereas I don't know if I'd be confident that a drone would be able to adapt like that. I'm sure they'll add features where the drone will be kept safe from, let's say, if it's raining, the drones will be waterproof. Or if
Yeah,
it's really windy, like the drones will probably have extra propellers or something to like counteract the wind. But I still feel that, like, even when you look at it, a hacking and stealing packages would be so much easier.
exactly. It's those 2 points again that whereas they'll probably all work on like a similar system, so they can't really crash into each other, or they
Yeah,
just work like completely efficiently on delivering things on time. There's again that scope of leaving it open for like technologically like smart people to hack into these systems. And like you brought up, like if it's an expensive package, I wouldn't probably trust it just flying in, because there's always that possibility of like a natural event happening, like whether it's a strong wind or just like a rough storm, which could cause problems for like things like drones. So that also is probably still something um, that needs like better development to be implemented.
also, if you look at the drones, suppose they'll all obviously operate on the software of the company that is making the drone. But if you have like a bug in the software, that could mean that all the packages for that day, which could be literally like millions of packages all over the world, are just like stopped. And that could, like, the question is, if those few hours or maybe even a day that you save by taking a drone instead of a human, if it's worth all the other risks that come with it.
Exactly. And then again, like the number of jobs that'll again be lost just by
Yeah,
implementing drones, it might create a few more in the IT sector, but I think in like the physical labor perspective, like the number of jobs that will be lost would be much greater than like the benefit provided by it.
yeah, for sure. And it's not only that, it's that a lot of people will be like pushed and forced into the IT section, because if the world only goes towards the development of like technology at the cost of these like simpler jobs, then that could create issues potentially. Like, now, if instead of Uber drivers, you had autonomous Uber cars, that could again create so many more loss of jobs. So I guess but at the same time, you can argue that, like, it's required, that's the cost of development, that when you move into the future, you have to accept that you can't have these manual laborers, because they're like, it's another time, right? Maybe in the past you used to have like these members of the court of the king, and now obviously those jobs aren't there because the times have changed. So maybe,
Exactly. Even basic things like, say, accounting, you'd have like certain people to like probably add up things, but now you have just one spreadsheet that can take care of what
exactly,
probably 3 to 4 people would have been doing 20 to 30 years. And that's just something that comes with like development, like you need to sacrifice to move into the future. So, yeah, I agree completely with you on that. Another thing I just wanted to talk about is what do you think about like space tourism per se? Like things like how Elon Musk developed SpaceX, probably not only for space tourism but for space exploration, but other billionaires who are keen to travel to space. And do you think that's something that the general public will have access to in the near future?
I think not the general public in the near future, but definitely like the other billionaires potentially could have access. But I do see it as something that the general public will have access to maybe in a few decades or so, because like at least me personally, it really fascinates me that the idea that you could go into space, because traditionally you always see space as like so vast and like it's up there, that it's not
Yeah, you
achievable.
always feel it's something like you can't really reach to. Like you think the
Yeah,
sky is the limit.
exactly.
Like you're never gonna probably go higher than an airplane or something. And
Yeah,
even getting there is quite an achievement. And now the possibility of basically leaving like our planet and realizing like how small we are in the entire universe. I feel it's quite a large idea, but I do think, like you said, in a few decades, it would be probably possible and available to the general public. Um, Not only in terms of technology by saying that we have efficient rockets or those like forms of transport, but also like probably establishing things like you have the International Space Station, maybe you could soon have like say hotels or other sort of
yeah,
things in space. I know it's a far reach right now, but I definitely think that that's a possibility in the future.
yeah, for sure. I think the only way space travel will pick up is if they is not only establishing the hotels but also establishing the safety. Like people,
Yeah,
nobody would want to go if they think that the rocket can be compromised, or that,
exactly.
like, what if in the hotel suddenly there's an oxygen leak? You
That's what.
you're
So I feel like how probably a few decades ago there was that same sort of fear for like say underwater things like
Yeah,
submarines or probably hotels underwater, and we've been able to overcome those challenges and problems. I feel in a similar way, it's basically just going to space. I know like underwater there is still that thing that you can always just swim up or take an emergency thing up, but from space you probably couldn't do something like that. But with like the advancements we have and we will make, I definitely think that it shouldn't be as much of a problem to develop like this entire industry into a possible sector.
yeah, for sure. It's and also it's the like it's really cool to think that potentially one day your holidays can go from like another continent to literally up in space, which is,
Exactly, exactly. Something
but
that,
at the
I
same
mean,
time,
that's what something like I feel
yeah.
a lot of us would dream of, just like looking up and thinking if you could actually go there. And now it might be a possibility.
But I guess at the same time, there's a lot of concern that already there are many people who can't even afford general travel. So it could be that like the divide that you're creating is even greater. That now the like people don't even have an opportunity to go to another country, but you have other people going to space. But I guess that's just a matter of opportunity and a bit of luck, right? That
Exactly. But I feel that's one thing that I don't think will be too possible. It's like bridging the technological divide that technology will create in the world. Like ever since I feel the internet was created or made public, that divide has just been constantly growing. And not only because like the world population has grown like exponentially, and now I think we're nearing 8 billion people. So that divide is obviously always going to grow. But probably keeping that in consideration by trying to provide for like the people who don't have these certain opportunities. Obviously, not like the maximum available. Like we can't. I don't think it's possible to provide space exploration to every person on Earth, but providing some other form, which at that time could be like history, would still sort of be bridging the divide.
I think also a lot of people would like. There's a lot of the Earth, not a lot, but at least there are substantial parts of the ocean, and even like in continents like Africa, there are still like some forests and things like that that haven't been completely discovered. So it could be that maybe people have this concern that you're going to travel to another planet potentially in the future, but we still haven't completely discovered ours. So maybe the tourism industry will focus more even on Earth. Because if you see during the COVID times, like tourism was booming within each country. So like everyone in India was traveling within India.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so I think that's also created a change where there was always the mindset that you have to go, like, if you're wealthy, then you have to go to like Europe
abroad
or
and not
yeah,
stay in your own country and really discover it. Yeah. I think that's another interesting point. If like in the future, will the travel industry, like the space exploration, really focus on like discovering the solar system or other planets like the moon, not the planet, but like the moon or Mars? Or would it be better to focus on first probably completely discovering the Earth? Like I think scientists have only like 5% of the Pacific Ocean has been discovered completely. So that entire abundance of not only new species and new creatures and new animals, but also like the possibility of finding new resources that we're hoping to find in space, but we just don't know that they already exist on Earth. And yeah, so uh, I feel that developing and providing facilities to discover the entire Earth first would be a better idea rather than leaving it and finding
yeah.
things beyond it.
And even to like what we were talking about, tourism and travel, I feel like one of the areas that there isn't as much focus on is like ships and water transport. Like if you
Yeah,
see, most people are only focusing on land transport, but it could be like if a lot of the world's cargo and very important things are still transported via ships.
yeah,
So if you can bring tech into that, where even the entire shipping industry can be organized. Like right now, there's a lot of like there are a lot of delays in shipping, and there are
exactly.
delays in
I feel it's almost becoming too over dependent on just like the main cargo. Like people don't understand the importance of the shipping industry in the world and
yeah,
how it's still not fully developed the way it should be. Like just recently, well, a few years ago in the Suez Canal when the ship got stuck. I mean, I think it was a few days, and that nearly halted like half the world's transport that was taking place via the ship because the
yeah,
Suez Canal was blocked. So something just as small as one ship getting blocked can like disrupt nearly half the world's economy is something that was quite like unexpected, I'd say, for the entire
yeah,
world
for
to
sure.
figure out.
And like while we're on the subject of talking about this dependence, we can even see like with the chip shortage that's been going on, like the amount of like almost panic it created in the world, where vehicles and literally like all technology, you had phones, you had like even the release of the PlayStation 5, there was like a
Yeah,
lot of issues, which was one of the most anticipated releases, even phones.
exactly. I think
So
that's like
yeah,
one of the really pertinent problems right now as we speak is like the shortage of silicon chips in the world around us, and how highly dependent we are on those small chips. Like if you consider the laptop right now, or just a car, or really anything that uses somewhat of a computer is dependent on a silicon chip, and I think yeah, there isn't the facilities to cope up with the demand for the world. So possibly looking into like the alternatives for that would also be something that needs to be looked on.
yeah, and even with the current chips, like the methods that we have, a lot of them are focused in like the best method for purification is focused in Taiwan. So you can
Okay.
see that like with the advancement of technology, there's like a lot of dependence on technology created as well. That's like even with transport, everything, that's something to think about, that like your entire industry is relying on like this one chip, right? So
Yeah,
what are there are obviously there's the method of finding new materials, but you can see, I feel like recently in the Apple launch that happened for the iPhone 14,
yeah,
you could see that a lot of companies have started making similar phones and focusing on recycling because
yeah.
they've realized that they also can't be too dependent.
Exactly. And I feel that's like one of the interesting things. At least I had read that during like the initial phase of COVID-19, so the tourism industry or the automobile industry, which also requires silicon chips, they essentially realized that obviously that like the demand for automobiles will reduce now because no one really wanted to leave their house or travel when it was at its worst. And they shifted production in just the general manufacture of silicon chips to provide for like other benefits because like the entire world basically shifted online. The demand for like gadgets which required these chips like increased exponentially, and I felt that was quite interesting that one industry was able to like help out on another.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And also, the so when we're talking about the alternatives, I think graphene has come up as one of the main alternative materials.
Yeah,
And so the reason was that it's really a amazing conductor. It's in fact even better than silicon.
right.
And the amount of energy that it loses while conducting electricity is also much less. So it's like a really high efficiency material.
Yeah,
So it's definitely something that requires a lot more research because
yeah.
if you can find better alternatives, it's always better.
Yeah, so the thing about graphene, I agree that it's almost better than silicon in quite a few factors. But I had read that one of the main problems is like how silicon chips how they basically work on electrical conductivity and using binary code, where they're switched off with like zeros and ones, and they can do those sort of like communication with laptops or, I mean, computers. The thing with graphene chips is that they can't really be switched off. So essentially, you just have devices or gadgets that are switched on throughout, like from their existence. And again, that creates the problem of sustainability and just general electric wastage. Like, why would I want like my electric mixer or something to be running 24/7 a day when I'm only going to use it for a few minutes in the day? So, again, like you said, research into it would really help like solve quite a few of these problems. But yeah, that's definitely like an interesting thing to go through.
That's true. And like I guess to conclude in all of these topics, what you can see is that these a lot of the advancements that are happening aren't necessarily for the common person. Like just a regular an average person may not need this high-tech graphene chip that is able to communicate or conduct electricity so fast. Like maybe they just
Exactly.
need a working product.
Yeah,
So that's why like it the question is whether you should focus on making the technology more available or making the technology better.
right. Yeah. I think that's like the perfect point that you just brought up, that instead of really focusing on just continuously developing to like the next stage, we should first really get everyone to the same stage before we try making that big next leap forward. So instead of like going for a crazy technology which like whose benefits we can't entirely make use of today, it would be better to first make it like a playing level field for the entire world to work
Yeah,
on.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think with that, we'll conclude this episode. I hope you guys liked our discussion on those topics. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you all next time.